very short presentation today, but with lots of content. I have one of my former clients here with me. I'm very happy about it. She knows I can talk forever. But I try to make this very brief. We talk about new pay. Why do we even have new pay? What is new pay and what is it good for? Then some inspirations for you. Ted and me had a chat before that, and he said, Sarah, you need to bring some examples. People need to see some models, not just talk the fluffy, but be a little bit more concrete. This is what I have prepared for today. And then what is really important to me later on, to give you some ideas how you can get started yourself, right? Not just to copy paste, but to kind of, what are the questions that you might want to discuss with your group, with your company, with the project team or whoever, to kind of build your own new pay model. So me, Sarah, I'm in Sweden right now. I have basically worked within this area, New Pay, as one of the founding members of the New Pay Collective. We're located in Germany, and we've done this for the past couple of years, doing a lot of research, experiments, working with companies on it, doing coaching training. So it's a lot about discovering this field of modern pay practices, basically. At the same time, since not every company is willing to do that, always trying out, okay, with whom can we actually engage in the conversation and try something else from the classical approach. However, I started with the classical perspective on comp and ben as a consultant back in the days, doing this now for 15 years. So I know the classical aspect of comp and ben as well as the more modern take on it. Right. So I was thinking about this picture, and I thought maybe I can fill the 40 minutes just by talking about this picture. What I really love about it is gives us already an idea of a group of people, roles, positions, employees, whatever, who might be just wondering what is our similarity and what is our difference, right? So the question here is, if we would have a pool of money, how would we distribute this fairly to this group of lifesavers, lifeguards? So if you want to use the chat and want to think about it a little bit, what criteria come to your mind? How would you now select who gets more or less, if you even would like to go that route? But what we can say from just that picture, everyone is dressed in the same way. They all have the same equipment, right? We believe they all have some basic training in saving lives, whatever that means. And they're all in the same location. They're at the beach, right? So this could qualify for them, all of them, to get the same salary. But maybe, and now if we compare this with classical company environments, organizational environments, maybe we look into more of a qualification thing. Maybe someone gets certified in a way, maybe has some sort of medical degree, or someone is an athlete, or I don't know, whatever the criteria could be. We could maybe also think maybe there's a supervisor in this group. I don't know, someone who's planning activities. We don't see that here. What about seniority, right? Seniority, usually one of the factors why someone gets more or higher paid than others. I don't know, it's a good idea with the lifesaver. We probably believe the older you get, you might not be as fast. But, just me thinking about this picture, what would be the criteria? How do we divide and distribute salaries in this round? I don't know if we have anyone with a good idea in a chat. Please read it out loud. Would be fun to hear that. But it's the same with results, right? You hear me talk about performance. What is a good result here? Saving lives, how many? Should this be linked to something? Am I more valuable because I have saved more lives instead of waiting on a rainy day at the beach and no one is swimming? So there's a lot that I can interpret in here. But you get a picture, right? We have a situation where it's me discussing without really knowing what would be the best criteria to distribute that pool of money to these individuals. What I like to believe is that this group of individuals is capable of having that discussion themselves. So they will be the ones saying, okay, maybe the time invest is more important here. Maybe teamwork is important. I cannot work 7 days in a row because that makes me less fast in an emergency case. We need to have, I don't know, whatever good planning behind that. Maybe we will always be 2 or 3 people working on the same spot together because it's impossible to do this on your own. So having them join a conversation and really discussing how do we want to work with one another, and then how do we want to divide pay, for instance. This is something that I believe is a way for the future.
Sarah, would you like me to read you some of the
Oh,
comments?
yeah. Yeah, I'm curious to hear that. Yeah.
Okay, great. Hours, training, need-based, experience, need, mutual evaluation, contribution, value. Those training others can be paid more as they do 2 jobs, lifesaver and trainer. Retention incentive, and then just to finish up, value to the organization, nature of work done, loyalty, market value, and finally experience, responsibilities, and needs.
Interesting. I would not, all of the criteria I have heard, I understand they exist in the world of compensation, right? I've used them probably myself in different models. But in this particular case, I was like, the more you work, the more you get paid in hours, or, you know, what's the need? So it's very difficult now to define this. So we need to understand there probably classical criteria that we have heard all the time from, I don't know, friends, colleagues, different companies in our experiences. And then we need to bring that to our situation. In this case, the lifeguards. Does that make sense here? Would that be actually the right thing to do, right? And this is where what I mentioned is let them discuss this instead of us opposing that to them and believing, well, if you've been trained more than the other ones, you should get more. Maybe that's not the right thing to do. It's just a warm-up. It's just an example here. So maybe you will keep that in mind next time you think about distribution of salaries in a fair way. All right, some inspirations. New pay models, or in general, you could call this compensation models, agile compensation, whatever. Some of the things that have been showcased as pioneers in the comp and ben world and the total reward world. Uniform salaries, everyone gets the same, very revolutionary in my point of view. Salary formulas, there will be role-based salary, self-set salaries. I have some example later on, so I'm just going through the list. And I think there's another session on self-set salaries today. So really recommend to look into that. Salary committees, but also on collective bargaining agreements, something more about flexibility, having a model where people can choose certain things, could be benefits, but could also be a trade-off between time and money and perks and all of that. And something that has been very popular to discuss or to mention is the 4-day work week, with being paid for 5 days, right? So you reduce the 1 day, but you get the same salary as before. So these are more popular, more known examples, but you will see the more I talk about it, often it ends up being a mixture of several things. So here's one example from Germany, Deutsche Bahn, which has roughly, I think, 200,000 employees in Germany, right? And they have obviously a great representation by the union, railway union. And in 2017, this union felt, why don't we not just ask our members, what is it that they would like to have as, you know, that we are fighting for in the next round? So are we fighting for extra salary, or are we fighting for better work conditions, etc.? They received 15,000 replies to that survey, and they found out that everyone had basically a different idea what would be valuable to them. And they couldn't really find a pattern. So they couldn't say that younger employees value time over money, or that a certain gender would value this and that. But it was really broad. There was a lot of different choices to make. So instead of defining now what would they ask for in the next negotiation with Deutsche Bahn, they kind of decided to have a model of choice where they would offer a salary increase or an additional week of vacation per year, or 1 hour less working time. And this is something that every employee then had a choice to kind of select which model would I like to use for the next round, instead of everyone getting a salary increase. So this is just an example where I would like to kind of show you, it's a big organization, right? What is important here, it's participative. So it's I'm asking the people, what is it that they want? And I kind of let them be part of the solution themselves. It's also shows self-responsibility. So I need to make a choice, right? I need to be responsible how I want to structure salaries, or how I would like to structure the whole package, if you think about it on a total reward package, and so on. Another example, self-set salaries, and I made this little sketch note. So I had an interview with someone from a company in Switzerland. So it's consultancy, 20, 30 people probably. And this is a teal organization. So some of you might be very familiar with that concept. So very self-organized, very transparent. And so they also take care of their salary processes in a very self-driven or self-organized and transparent way. So what they do is they basically have a shared document that everyone gets access to. And for the next salary review round, they just ask, please put in your number. What is the number that you would like to have next? So if you have 45,000 today, for next year, what would you like to have? You would like to stay, or you would like an increase, and how much should that be? So I am going to give you my own number. So I have defined it myself, but everyone else can chip in and give me an understanding of, okay, they would see me higher, they would see me lower, they would see me as much as the other one in my team, right? So there's a sheet that flows around with a lot of information. And then they engage in a conversation. So they have a very structured process of me discussing my case and why is it that I want, for instance, 5,000 more with one of my peers. I have 4 minutes to bring forward my arguments, and then the other person has 4 minutes to kind of either counterpart or encourage me to ask even for more, right? So there is a conversation happening that is beyond just the number. It's why do you ask for so much or so little? Or why do you think you have done so well in the past? Or what do you expect from the future to happen? So it's a conversation that happens. And after that conversation, I have 1 week to really reflect on my own ideas about my new salary, but also about my self-worth. What have I heard from that conversation that gives me a new perspective on the salary that I was asking for, but also on me as an employee, my contribution and my impact? And then at the end, I would just bring my new number into that spreadsheet again without being corrected. This number will be paid out next time. There's no adjustment and no one who's kind of making final decisions. I am the one responsible for the final decision. So here again, it's a lot about participation. It's a fair process. Everyone is taking part in that. Super transparent, the high level of self-responsibility, but it's also we thinking. It's we have a joint conversation about this topic, and we want to kind of help each other out with arguments, right? With ideas. I want to push someone to ask for more because I believe that they should have more. Or I want to kind of say, listen, you might be the highest paid employee in this room. Do you feel comfortable with that? So it's something that we as a collective, as a group, will strengthen. How am I time-wise? I have not so much time left. All right. So I found this in an older version, like a magazine, in a Compliment magazine a couple of years ago. It was published. Robert Bosch, a big organization in Germany, has gone super transformative into an agile organization, and they kind of looked into various aspects. This is a messy slide, so I have another slide where it kind of is a little bit more organized for you, but it looks into the level of leadership and trust, right? From really top-down classical leadership. I have a manager who tells me exactly what to do, to very self-organized. So the team makes the decision. The team is the champion in that subject matter expertise. So they make decisions themselves. And also have that dimension of how structured is this part of the organization. Do we know anything, or do we kind of experiment still, and we have really little idea of what is happening tomorrow? So these two dimensions, and they have looked into it and said, okay, based on these dimensions, we need to think about pay in a different way. Since I'm not having too much time, I would just like to show this to you. So you can say that salary bands as something that is very classic, right? A manager gets a reference of salaries where they say, you can, the people in your team with this certain role, let's say it's a developer, you can pay them from, I don't know, 100 to 150, right? Currently, is that employee on 130? So now you need to make some assessments, and we are delegating that task to you as a company, to you as a manager, to make that decision. We will guide you, right? But it's really less trust into the individuals. It's more a leadership matter, a top-down approach. And it works then when we have everything planned. It's stable. The positions are clear. We know what they do. They're not changing every time. It's not every month that they take a new project, right? They have tasks and they deliver on these tasks. And I can judge if they have maybe succeeded or if they have improved their skills, etc. So this is where I would put the classical approach, which is more often supported with salary bands and some general guidance for leaders to make salary decisions. And then on the full right side, we have uniform salary. So everyone gets the same. So now there are organizations who have that approach. Everyone gets the same salary, from the managers, the CEO or the managing director to the regular employee. They all share the same salary. Usually smaller organization, but you can also think of it as certain teams where we have the whole team gets the same salary, and everyone in that team, if you want to kind of scale on that solution. So here it's like we trust that everyone in this team is capable to make decisions, and if they think we live in a very unstable situation where every day is a new day, we need to experiment, we maybe drop that project, we may need to fund something, you need fundings for something else. Everything is unknown. We don't want to have differentiations, and we are similar in our qualifications, and everyone brings their value, like a valuable perspective to the team. Then this could make sense. Good. So new pay is not just a framework, or it's actually not a framework at all, right? It's not a model that you can just adopt and then plug and play for your organization. It's really the approach. how do we design a model for ourselves that works for us as a company, our size, our culture, our leadership style, our structure. And it's really more to find out how are we approaching that topic around compensation, and not what is it that we need to do next. Skip that. We don't really have so much time left. But maybe here, what we found out over the last probably 5 years when looking into different modern models around compensation and rewards, is that they kind of are around these 7 dimensions. It's fairness, it's transparency, self-responsibility, participation. I mentioned it in some of the examples earlier. But it's also permanent beta, which we mean is like your salary structure or the system that you apply today might not be the one that you use in 5 years. So as the organization is changing, your model might need to adapt to. It's we thinking, it's going away from the individual needs to be satisfied to we as a whole group need to function with that model. It needs to be fair across the organization and not just for individuals. And based on, as this was the kind of the starting point, we kind of defined 7 guiding principles that you might find helpful when you kind of approach that. It's really say a fair compensation structure is more important than benchmarks. So we're not looking into the world out there. There might be companies who pay so much more. There will always be, right? We look inside of our organization and say, what is fair to us? What's a fair structure throughout the entire organization? Participation from the employees is more important than expertise. So even though I am a former comp and ben expert, I can come in and tell you how I think you should do it, but it's basically the employees, just like the lifeguards in the previous example, who have much more understanding of their jobs and what they would consider fair. So involve them into the design of a new model. And transparency and clarity is more important than perfection. It's important that everyone understands what you do. And before you say, oh, now I have this completely figured out, this is the model, it's communicated, change plan is attached to it, yada, yada, yada. It's more, do you understand that part of this change was a little bit tricky? We needed to see if it works, and then we adjust it. So being open about the design of your compensation model with your organization is super important. And then look into the future. What works for this organization that you want to be, and not look into the past successes. You will always have these people who are still on a high paycheck because they were super performers in the past, but they're not any longer, right? So what makes this company successful, and focus on that. Good. The rest you can take a photo, screenshot. I think I'm almost there. I just want to see if there's any reaction or a question maybe that comes in that I can reply to.
Yeah, we've got about 11, 12 minutes to go.
Oh, sorry. But then that's fine. But maybe there's a question I can reply to.
And there's also a question, yes. So one of the only question that's here so far is, what are culturally appropriate solutions?
Culturally, as in country, national?
Egon, why don't you unmute yourself and amplify that?
In point 7, you write finding culturally appropriate solutions is more.
Oh, so you mean that one? Yeah. Sorry, I haven't even looked at it. So what we mean is company culture, right? So what is let's take 2 different cultures. One culture is let's find an example. It's very inclusive. We want to respect everyone's voice. We want people to accept the solution. We are usually very transparent with our approach. We want to we are very caring. in the way we work with our clients, customers, but also with our people. And we put this people are the most important, blah, 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 on top of everything, right? This is one culture. If you have that kind of culture, it would be weird to have a very secretive salary approach, to kind of say, well, now you're absolutely not included, and we don't really want to be open about it. We just make decisions, and whether you like it or not. And then on the other hand, you have other cultures where it's very dominant, right? Where it's maybe performance is the most important. If you have a very performance-driven culture, that is where you have very the individual alphas who go out and close the deals every day. It's like selling telephones, right? Something like that. That would also not really match with the approach where a salary committee would come together and think about if you have done a good job, when you clearly say, but you can see that on my numbers. So what I mean is the company culture, structure, leadership, all of that is important to then understand whether or not, or what kind of model works for us. You're nodding, so I think that helps. Thank you.
Can I continue questions? Do you have, can we use the rest of our time or some of our time? How do you prepare a team for these kinds of discussions? And then related to that was an extra comment. What are the prerequisites before these conversations can be successful? Yeah, great pair of questions there.
So I'm just maybe, I don't have I was just thinking if I have a page that I can show here, but so usually what we do often, not all the time, because not all the companies are ready for it, but we ask for volunteers in the organization who wants to participate in a project where we look into our compensation model. We have done this with small organizations. We have done this with big organizations. By big, I mean 2,000, 3,000 employees, right? And this is where we have openly said, we want to look into our compensation model. We don't really know how it's going to look like, but we need people who contribute. And we don't also know how you are going to contribute. We want to figure this out. What we have seen from our experience, that it's usually a topic that people are very interested in. So they want to show up, and then I had cases where we had 50 volunteers. You cannot have a project with 50 people. So what we asked them to do is, why would you as an individual, and how would you contribute to this project in your way? And how do we ensure that this is a very diverse team, right? We don't want to only have managers. We don't want to only have the youngsters. We want people who, you know, it's like we want to make sure that we represent the entire workforce, the way the demographics that we have, and the different departments and the different locations, for instance. And then we bring them together and say, okay, what are the pain points today? Do you think the current model is fair? And by just starting these basic questions, we will hear, yeah, actually, it's not so complex, but I'm wondering, why is that, and why is that? And you find that often, and it's not a promise that I make, but often there are little things that can be done to improve the current model rather than being totally revolutionary on and to find a new model, by just getting them to participate. So what was the second question that was attached to it? Maybe I have.
The second question that was attached to it was somewhat related. What are the prerequisites before these conversations can be successful?
Management buy-in, as in all the projects. So I think if you find that, and this is how I usually start, we start with the top management and said, are you willing to go that route? Can we do it participatory? Is it okay? What are the limits? We call it the playing field, right? So what's inside the football field and what's outside of it? Who makes the decisions? Who is actually the one deciding on that? Can we change the model? what is important? I mean, usually, and I find that a lot of companies, even, and I don't work with only modern organizations that are agile and young and fresh and tech. I also work with production and sides and, you know, people that usually where they don't even have stable internet sometimes. So it's everywhere. And usually they say they want a fair model that people understand, because they are really tired of explaining something and getting into these endless conversations. How we're going to do that, they will usually leave it up to us. And then if they're a little bit more old-fashioned, they would say, but we would like to have a final say. Okay, but this is something that you can bring to that group and say, this is our frame. How do we work with this?
Great, thank you. A couple more here.
Mm-hmm.
What brings you to the conclusion that fair compensation structure is more important than market comparisons?
So there are many ways to explain to answer this right now. So first of all, I have probably seen, you might want to believe it or not, 1 million data points on salaries, right? I've been a compensation consultant for 15 years. I have done benchmarks myself. I have fed benchmark tools with salary data. So there's one point is data quality. And there's always like, who's feeding in salary information into a tool that I can distract? So if I feel I'm actually, my salaries are fine, I would not want to benchmark them with someone else. So companies who feel something is off usually contribute with their own data and ask for benchmark information. So there is not really like the full, there is not really a full set of data that is not in itself sort of flawed. So that's just the data quality side of it. Often we have the matching between positions is also difficult. I remember when Agile was very new, you could not get benchmark information on Agile coaches. You would always look for project managers. And this is usually very different from an Agile coach, right? So we have seen, and I see this all the time, that the clients, they request benchmark data, especially because leaders want that. Leaders feel very secure. They feel like once they have a data point that they, in a span between, and I've just done this in the afternoon today for a salary review round. They want bands, and the bands are between 70 and 130. That's such a wide band. How much information is that really? So where you want to position your team salary in that band. So I think there is the illusion that there's the right salary out there that we need to follow, right? Which is usually not the case. So instead of just thinking about the Jack and the Sally and the Toms, and we feel like we need to make sure that they are happy and that we have a competitive salary for those few, do we not need to look into, is everyone in that bracket or in that role, in that level, are they paid equally and fairly? Because roles change, tasks change, managers are changing teams and so on. So you always have an endless discussion of why is someone getting 20% more in the same role? And this causes a lot of conflicts, and you will have much more problems internally than if you would just match individuals with the external market. I hope that's it's a long answer to one question, but
no, and it sounded very thorough. Thank you. So you've got 2 minutes to go. Do you want to wrap up? We need to wrap up.
Yes. Okay. I think I was very ambitious by showing you much more. I hope you got an idea that there are different models out there. I don't know if someone posted examples that they found online. There are some organizations out there very transparent with their journey. You can maybe just reach out to me if you would like to have more information. In general, my advice is don't copy paste, find your own way, right? That's among all. The best way is obviously to include it with the people in your organization. And then maybe just to find out if you're interested and to hear more about it. We are German-based, so a lot of our content, unfortunately, at the moment is in German. But we have a new pay report out that was, for instance, English. We are now thinking of publishing one of our books around new pay also in English. So maybe we can connect on LinkedIn, and if you're interested in further discussion, just ping me. And then I would like to thank everyone. Maybe I can stop sharing. Maybe I see faces now. I don't know. Some look tired. Maybe it's late or early. I don't know. Yes.
Well, please do also share your appreciations with and for Sarah. Thank you, Sarah.
Thank you very much, and I hope you have a good time today with the rest of the sessions that you will look into.